Okay, so yes, this will be the final lecture on Kundera's novel. We're going to cover the final chapter, Karenin's Smile, the dog chapter, I guess. To call it the dog chapter is kind of oversimplifying. The dog does play a prominent role in the chapter. But out of all the parts of the book, I think this is the shortest one, or one of the ones that I have the least to say about. So I'm hoping that we'll have time at the end of class to sort of wrap things up, kind of just go over some of the broad themes of the novel, maybe kind of put a, tie that knot, put a cherry on top, whatever you want to, whatever expression you want to use. And then maybe we'll have some time at the end of class either to just leave early, or we can even talk maybe about the paper, the final essay, and maybe strategies and what you can do, what I might do myself if I were in your shoes, and that kind of thing. Maybe a good thing we could do also, if we have time, is just to give a quick summary of the philosophers that I'm, Kierkegaard, Camus, Vonnegut. Those are the three choices. So how would they respond to this novel? All right, so that's an interesting question, I think. That's the first option, though. I guess the second option is more general. You just pick one of the themes. In fact, I think I need to go, I hope I don't forget this. I'm going to probably add another theme. So I think on the option 2, you can either write about lightness and weight, going from light to dark, but I'm probably going to add the body-soul dichotomy too. So if you want to about the body-soul instead, you could do that. It'd be up to you. But so that's the game plan today. Let's go ahead. I want to jump right in to part 7, the final part. Part 6, we talked about kitsch, and I already erased all. I had it all on the board there. Kitsch, which was kind of fun. I think I like that chapter a lot. It's very funny. Maybe I should read, I already did this, but maybe it's a good way to segue. Maybe I should read the end of chapter, or part 6, and then we'll move on very quickly to part 7, because I was in a bit of a hurry at the end of the last lecture to wrap up part 6. So I don't think I spent quite as much time on this last passage as I should have. So let's start with that. And we're talking about the death of Thomas and the death of Franz, and Kundera is sort of comparing their epitaphs, right? The epitaphs, right? The message on their gravestone, right? The inscription on their gravestone. Thomas, his son, later in life, his son Simon kind of has a little bit of a relationship with them, right? They sort of reconnect. And so his son Simon is the one that ends up, and Simon's very religious, he's Catholic, and even though his dad wasn't religious, when his dad dies, he has this inscription, he wanted the kingdom of God on earth, right? And then Franz, his inscription, a return after long wanderings, which is ironic because that's what his wife chose, and she sucks, like Mary Claude, like totally screwed the guy over, right? Talked about that a lot last class. Poor Franz, ends up dying, trying to be a hero, and loses his voice and can no longer speak for himself, and his final wishes are not granted because they're not even known, and the wife takes over, and his poor, his young lover is sobbing at the back of the funeral house, just it's very, very tragic, right? Poor Franz. But I'm just reading, this is chapter 28. The moment he received the telegram from the chairman of the collective farm, he jumped on his motorcycle. He arrived in time to arrange for the funeral. This is Thomas's son. The inscription he chose to go under his father's name at the gravestone read, "He wanted the kingdom of God on earth." He was well aware that his father would not have said it in those words, but he was certain that they expressed what his father actually thought. The kingdom of God means justice. Thomas had longed for a world in which justice would reign. Thomas had longed for a world in which justice would reign. Hadn't Simon the right to express his father's life in his own vocabulary? Of course he had. Haven't all heirs had that right from time immemorial? A return after long wanderings was the inscription adorning the stone above Franz's grave. It can be interpreted in religious terms, the wanderings being our earthly existence, the return, our return to God's embrace. But the insiders knew that it had a perfectly secular meaning as well. Indeed, Marie Claude talked about it every day. So his wife takes over his story after he dies, poor Franz, and tells a story that he would have hated, right? Like, oh, he loved me in the end, he was coming back, he just went off on his little adventure, midlife crisis, but in the end, his wife came and she makes herself a hero and reinvents his life. But this is sort of the sad thing about death, and this is maybe what I should have spent more time on last lecture, so here we go. This is the entire chapter 29, very brief, but an entire chapter nonetheless. What remains of the dying population of Cambodia? One large photograph of an American actress holding an Asian child in her arms. What remains of Tomas? An inscription reading, "He wanted the kingdom of God on earth." And what remains of Beethoven? A frown, an improbable name, Maine, and a somber voice intoning "Es muss sein." What remains of Franz? An inscription reading, "A return after long wanderings," and so on and so forth. Before we are forgotten, we will be turned into kitsch. Kitsch is the stopover between being and oblivion. Right, so this chapter, again, I'm not going to talk too much about kitsch. I did that enough in the previous lecture, but kitsch is the sort of fairy tale fantasy covering up of the ugliness of the world kind of thing. And as much as he craps on it throughout that chapter, he sort of admits that all of us need a little kitsch. Right? It's a part of our human condition. Everybody needs, even Tomas had to have a little bit of kitsch. His love for Teresa was sentimental. Even Sabina, right? As unsentimental as she is, towards the end, she has this longing for the family and to have a family and for the loving father and all this stuff. And so as much as Tomas and Sabina hated kitsch, even they needed a little bit of it. They couldn't resist it in their life. But we become kitsch when we die. This is not the word that Heidegger uses to describe it, but what he's saying here is very similar to a point that Heidegger makes about death. That death is something, well, there's a lot of things that Heidegger says about death, but death when it comes to our relations with others, right? When we die, we are no longer there to stand for ourselves. The only people that are there to stand for us are our loved ones, the people that remember us. And so we inevitably become kitsch, right? We become those good memories, and that's fine. That's what we do. That's, as he puts it, right? That's our right as heirs, right? That we've had since time immemorial. But it certainly sucks when someone like Marie Claude is the one that's in charge of it, right? Because she doesn't tell a story that Franz would have approved of, right? In fact, maybe, I didn't even come to this realization when I was covering it last class, so I'm glad I went over this again. This is the danger of going public. You remember all four characters, out of all four of them, Franz is the only one that seems to want to destroy the wall between the private and the public. He thinks being private is not being true. You should be honest and open about everything and not have a wall. But what happens when you go into the public, your words get misinterpreted, right? Tomas publishes the article and people misinterpret it. Well, of course it was edited against his wishes, but even his son, who thought he understood it, was explaining it to him, and he's like, "That's not what I meant, It's you shouldn't punish people if they don't know what they mean, but they should still feel guilty. It's more complicated than that. The public always takes your words and they misunderstand. They don't know you personally. That's why Tomas liked being a surgeon. When people didn't like his work, they could tell him to his face, and he could explain to them in person, well, this is why I did what I did, and defend himself to the public. Who are you defending yourself to, right? And so I think Franz fell victim to this. He wanted to sort of destroy the walls between the public and private, and it backfires. Now that he's dead, those that remember him, those that carry on his legacy, are those that he doesn't want to carry on his legacy, that lie about him, that make some fake Franz story up to suit their needs, right? So, I think they said this in Game of Thrones. It was kind of cheesy the way they said it, but we only die when the last person that remembers us dies. So kitsch is the step between being, living, and oblivion, not even existing at all. We exist through those that remember us when we pass on, those that survive us. All right, cool. Let's get to Karenin's smile. Okay, Karenin's smile. What is Karenin's smile, by the way? It's kind of hard to sum it up. How would I sum it up? I'm trying to think. Her bark, right? Her being a dog, acting doggish, what if that's a word, right? That's her smile. That's her showing she's happy, just acting like a dog, right? This is a sad chapter, I think, but it's a bittersweet. It's a beautiful sadness, I think. It's I really love this, the way the book ends, to be honest with you. My cards on the table there. But we're going to start in chapter 3. So we're part 7. Chapter 2. The chapters get much longer. It's a shorter part, but the chapters are a bit more substantial. Chapter 2. This reads almost like it was written by some vegan. I'm wondering, was he a vegetarian or vegan? I should look up Kundera. This sort of this interesting theme of our relationship with the other animals on the planet, and how is it that we justify our dominance of them. This is on page 286. The very beginning of Genesis tells us that God created man in order to give him dominion over fish and fowl and all creatures. Of course, Genesis was written by a man, not a horse. There is no certainty that God actually did grant man dominion over other creatures. What seems more likely, in fact, is that man invented God to sanctify the dominion that he had usurped for himself over the cow and the horse. Yes, the right to kill a deer or a cow is the only thing all of mankind can agree upon, even during the bloodiest of wars. And some vegans would disagree with that, probably. The reason we take that right for granted, to dominate animals, the reason we take that right for granted is that we stand at the top of the hierarchy. But let a third party enter the game, a visitor from another planet, for example, someone to whom God says, "Thou shalt have dominion over creatures of all other stars." And all at once, taking Genesis for granted becomes problematic. Perhaps a man hitched to the cart of a Martian or roasted on the spit by the inhabitants of the Milky Way will recall the veal cutlet he used to slice on his dinner plate and apologize belatedly to the cow. So this is, again, why are we better than animals? Why do we eat them, right? What sort of gives us the right to do it, right? Well, God said, right? He made us in charge of this place, right? This is the arrogance of humanity, I guess, is what he's part of this chapter, I think, is closing the book up. It's finding, how does Teresa and Tomas sort of end up? What is love? It's not really perfect. It's never perfect, that kind of thing. But another thing, too, I think has a lot to do with man's arrogance, which is, I think, a theme that we've seen throughout the course, particularly, I think, with Vonnegut. That was a big theme in Science of the Titans. We're so full of ourselves that we have to invent these grand schemes and stories of our lives. We have to be a part of this big, epic struggle, when really we're just pathetic creatures, right, looking for love, kind of thing. And so Teresa, right, she's having some of these thoughts while she's looking at her dog, right? She's like, and her dog is coming to the end of its days, right? The dog's getting old and starting to limp. It starts to develop a cyst. On the bottom of page 287, Teresa continued on her path, and watching her heifers rub against each other, she thought what nice animals they were, calm, guileless, and sometimes childishly animated. They looked like fat 50-year-olds pretending they were 14. Yeah, I always thought cows are really cute. I never got vegans. They're they're talking about fuzzy, cute animals. They're always talking about, squirrels and, some stuff like that. But cows are real cute. I think if I would probably, just to not be a hypocrite, I would kill one. Somebody who's here's the gun and, do it. And it was I knew to do it well, so the cow died. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I eat the meat, so some people wouldn't do that. No, I want someone else to butcher it for me. I'm not saying I would enjoy it, but just to not be a hypocrite. Yeah, okay, yeah. But if I raised the cow, if I gave it a name, I don't know if I'd be able to do that. You know what I mean? It's sort of and honestly, I don't know how I can defend myself. I'm a human, and humans eat cows. That's not really an argument. So I guess in a certain sense, the vegan's got a point. Maybe I'm being arrogant. There was nothing more touching than cows at play. Teresa took pleasure in their antics and could not help thinking that man is as much a parasite on the cow as the tapeworm is on man. We have sucked their udders like leeches. Man, the cow parasite, is probably how non-man defines man in his zoology books. Yeah, I'm wondering some aliens flying over Earth looking down and trying to define. They're cow parasites. They just suck onto these things all the time, especially in certain societies where the cow, maybe some Hindu village where the sacred cow, and they milk it all day, and it's that's why it's so holy, right? It's so bountiful. Now, we may treat this definition as a joke and dismiss it with a condescending laugh, like I just did. But Teresa took it seriously. She found herself in a precarious position. Her ideas were dangerous and distanced her from the rest of mankind. Even though Genesis says that God gave man dominion over all animals, we can also construe it to mean that he merely entrusted them to man's care. Man was not the planet's master, merely its administrator, and therefore eventually responsible for his administration. Descartes took a decisive step forward. He made man maître et propriétaire de la nature, master and proprietor of nature. And surely there's a deep connection between that step and the fact that he was also the one who point blank denied animals a soul. Descartes didn't think animals had feelings, a soul. He thought they were just robots, that they're created by God like machines, and they do scream when you stab them, but that's just like their engine like squeaking or something, right? They don't feel or have a soul or anything. They're machines made for us to just eat and grab and do what we want with. We're the masters of them, right? Arrogance. Man is master and proprietor, says Descartes, whereas the beast is merely an automaton, an animated machine, a machina animata. When an animal laments, it's not a lament, it's merely a rasp of a poorly functioning mechanism. When a wagon wheel grates, the wagon is not in pain. It simply needs oiling. Thus, we have no reason to grieve for a dog being carved up alive in a laboratory. Page 289. Teresa kept stroking Karenin's head, which was quietly resting in her lap, while something like the following ran through her mind. There's no particular merit in being nice to one's fellow man. She had to treat the other villagers decently because otherwise she couldn't live there. Even with Tomas, she was obliged to behave lovingly because she needed him. We can never establish with certainty what part of our relations with others is the result of our emotions, love, antipathy, charity, or malice, and what part is predetermined by the constant power play among individuals. True human goodness, in all its purity and freedom, can come to the fore only when its recipient has no power. Mankind's true moral test, its fundamental test, which lies deeply buried from view, consists of its attitude towards those who are at its mercy, animals. And in this respect, mankind has suffered a fundamental debacle, a debacle so fundamental that all others stem from it. This is an interesting thesis. I don't know if I agree with it, but our cruelty to animals, our ability to treat them like things and machines to just use for our food or whatever, or to plow our field and beat, they don't hurt, that's just the motor making a noise, right? That's the beginning of human indecency. That's the fall of man, right? That's the loss of our innocence. Interesting thesis. I don't know if I agree. Interesting thesis, though. One of the heifers had made friends with Teresa. The heifer would stop and stare at her with big brown eyes. Teresa knew her. She called her Marquetta. She would have been happy to give her all her heifers names, but she was unable to. There were too many of them. Not so long before, 40 years or so, all the cows in the village had names. And if having a name is a sign of having a soul, I can say that they had souls, despite Descartes. But then the villages were turned into a large collective factory, and the cows began spending all their lives in the 5 square feet set aside for them in their cow sheds. From that time on, they had no names and become mere machinae and animatae. The world has proved Descartes correct. Has it? No, but self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, I guess. Descartes' the father of modern philosophy, as many people say, and I kind of agree with Heidegger, the beginning of the end of humanity, right? Turning people into robots, turning the world into a mechanism, whatever, but I don't want to digress. Let's get back to this. Before I read the rest of this passage, which is probably going to make me tear up a bit, this test of human goodness, this is also kind of Christian. I think Kundera is, if he's not a Christian, he's definitely influenced quite a bit by Christian ethics. What is the saying? I will judge you by the way you treat the least among you. Is that the saying that Jesus says? I don't know, it's in the Gospels, right? He says, you will be judged how you treat the lowest among you, right? Of course you're gonna kiss the ass of the king. Of course you're gonna kiss your boss's ass. How do you treat the homeless guy down the street? You know, how do you treat the person that's struggling, right? That's beneath you socially? That's the test. How do you treat animals? You know, that's the test for your goodness. And this is why I think Tomas is the hero, right? How does he put it here? I should have told you. I was going to ask you, who does it sound like? But yeah, true goodness can only come to the fore when its recipient has no power, right? So Tomas is good and decent to Teresa, I think, as good as he can be. Of course, he cheats on her or whatever. But she's weak, right? She's powerless to him. She comes to him and just gives herself to Tomas, right? Here I am. I've got my life in this suitcase. I'm bringing it to you. It's a heavy suitcase. Hope you're ready for heaviness, but I'm here. And he's like, yeah. And he could have taken advantage of her. He could have broken her heart. He could have been a total sleazebag. But he tried to be as good as he could to her. And he compromised himself slightly. He didn't give up the women, but he did compromise himself. He moved, didn't take a job when he thought he should have, moved back to Prague when it was against his. So to me, I think that this is something, you know, as much as a kind of a F-boy as Tomas comes off, I think he's the hero of the book in that sense. He's the one that gets it right. He's the one that's able to mix the lightness and the weight and the soul and the body and all that. Obviously, he's more in touch with this and he's more in touch with that, but he's able to figure out how to balance them both correctly. I think the other characters never quite figure it out. Franz does the worst, obviously, in my opinion. But let's read this passage about Nietzsche. And I think I told you the story about Nietzsche, right? He went mad. He lost his mind. And the last thing he did was hug a horse. Why did he hug a horse? I don't know. I don't know why this passage makes me so emotional, but it does. So I'm going to try to get through it. Teresa, she keeps appearing before my eyes. I see her sitting on the stump, petting Karenin's head and ruminating on mankind's debacles. Another image comes to mind. Nietzsche leaving his hotel in Turin, seeing a horse and a coachman beating it with a whip. Nietzsche went up to the horse, and before the coachman's very eyes, he put his arm around the horse's neck and burst into tears. That took place in 1889, when Nietzsche, too, had removed himself from the world of people. In other words, it was at the time when his mental illness had just erupted. For that very reason, I feel that this gesture has broad implications. Nietzsche was trying to apologize to the horse for Descartes. His lunacy, that is, his final break with mankind, began at that very moment that he burst into tears over the horse. And that's the Nietzsche I love, just as I love Teresa, with the mortally ill dog resting his head in her lap. I see them one next to the other, both stepping down from the road, along with mankind, the master and proprietor of nature, who marches onward. Yeah, people always give Nietzsche crap for this because, you know, Nietzsche talked about empathy very critically. He didn't like empathy. He thought that feeling empathetic towards people was condescending. And he thought that suffering was sometimes good, that you have to suffer, and that makes you stronger. And so people say this, he's a hypocrite. He felt sorry for the horse. He felt empathy for the horse, and he grabbed the horse, and that's feeling sorry for the horse. But I think, again, he was just being like angered. He was angered by the arrogance of modernity, trying to make the horse into a machine, right? Nietzsche probably imagined the horse being rode by some knight into the battlefield, being used, but at least something more beautiful and noble and glorious. Instead, this coachman, who knows what he's beating him for? The horse apparently couldn't move the coach because it was too heavy, right? It was too heavy for the horse. And the coachman was like, come on, damn it, just try harder. And the horse was struggling and neighing, trying to move it, and it wouldn't move. And Nietzsche just snapped, he freaked out, and he never spoke a word again that made sense. He went totally nuts. But again, I think this is, again, you idiot. The horse can't move this freaking thing. And how important are those freaking packages? He was probably an Amazon driver in 1880, whatever, right? Gotta get these Amazon packages, horse, you know? How important is it? You're treating this animal like you're an idiot. It's not gonna work. Stop. Stop, you idiot. This is not progress. This is arrogance. But yeah, and she's even guilty of it too, right? They go for a walk and they take the dog, and the dog doesn't want to go for a walk. The dog's like limping. He's just doing it for us, said Teresa. He didn't want to go for a walk. He's just doing it to make us happy. It was sad, what she said. Yet without realizing it, they were happy. They were happy not in spite of their sadness, but thanks to it. They were holding hands and both had the same image in their eyes, a limping dog who represented 10 years of their lives. This is another, I think, example of beauty by mistake, accidental beauty, right? Sad, tragic, but, you know, this moment of connection, happiness. Chapter 4. Why was the word ideal so important for Teresa? Something's idyllic. What does that mean usually? What's an idyll or ideal? Idyllic. No one knows what that means? Usually it just means having in the country. So it's, oh, you had an idyllic childhood. You lived out in the country and, you know, all that sort of thing, outside the city. But he kind of goes over the original meaning, the etymology, right? It's kind of connected to paradise, actually. It's connected to paradise. Now it kind of means rural, country life, simple life, that kind of thing. But originally it was compared, you know, ideal, idyllic, idealism. I guess the other similarly pronounced word, ideal, that kind of thing. Why was the word idol so important for Teresa? Well, raised as we are on the mythology of the Old Testament, we might say that an ideal is an image that has remained with us like a memory of paradise. Life in paradise was not like following a straight line to the unknown. It was not an adventure. It moved in a circle among known objects. Its monotony bred happiness, not boredom. That's funny. I was visiting Austin this weekend, and my sister's boyfriend asked me if my cat gets bored. I was like, because I was left her alone for a couple days. I was like, she's gonna get bored? I was like, I don't think she gets bored. She gets angry that I'm not there. Yeah. But I think that's, again, wanting that cycle, you know? I don't want you to enter. She gets mad when I don't do what I normally do. You know, normally, like, every day I go to bed, like, before I go to bed, I'll watch the news for a couple hours, then go up to bed, read for maybe 30, 40 minutes, and go to bed, you know? But if, like, I have a, weird day, sometimes she'll paw me, like, sit down on the couch, you know? She'll meow me or whatever. This is Karenin, right? She's not bored, I don't think. She's just spoiled, right? And she wants uniformity. She wants repetition. She likes that. Gives her comfort. As long as people lived in the country, in nature, surrounded by domestic animals, in the bosom of regularly recurring seasons, they retained at least a glimmer of that paradisiac idyll. Sorry, paradisiac. I always get that word wrong. Paradisiac idyll, paradise-like. That is why Teresa, when she met the chairman of the collective farm at the spa, conjured up an image of the countryside, a countryside she'd never lived in or known, that she found enchanting. It was her way of looking back to paradise. Adam, Adam from the Bible, right? Adam, leaning over a well, did not yet realize that what he saw was himself. He would not have understood Teresa when she stood before the mirror as a young girl and tried to see her soul through her body. Adam was like Karenin. Teresa made a game of getting him to look at himself in the mirror, but he never recognized his image. He gazed at it vacantly, with incredible indifference. Animals never got banished from paradise. God banished man, right? We're the ones that ate the fruit and got naughty. Oh my God, we're naked, we gotta cover ourselves. Animals don't feel shame. They walk around naked, no big deal, right? They don't even have this separation between the soul and the body, right? As she puts it, she can't get her dog to recognize his reflection. She's thinking Adam in the Garden of Eden wouldn't recognize his reflection in the water. Comparing Adam and Karenin leads me to the thought that in paradise, man was not yet man. Or to be more precise, man had not yet been cast out on man's path. Now we're longtime outcasts, flying through the emptiness of time in a straight line, right? Not the cycle. Yet somewhere deep down, a thin thread still ties us to that far-off, misty paradise, where Adam leans over a well, unlike Narcissus. You might know the myth of Narcissus in Greek. He looks at his reflection in the water and he can't turn away. He's like stuck for his life or whatever. And Adam leans over a well, and unlike Narcissus, never even suspects that the pale yellow blotch appearing in it is he himself. The longing for paradise is man's longing not to be man. On page 297 at the top, dogs were never expelled from paradise. Karenin knew nothing about the duality of body and soul and had no concept of disgust. That's why Teresa felt so free and easy with him. And that is why it is so dangerous to turn an animal into a machina animata, a cow into an automaton for the production of milk. By doing so, man cuts the thread binding him to paradise and has nothing left to hold onto or comfort him on his flight through the emptiness of time. From this jumble of ideas came a sacrilegious thought that Teresa could not shake off. The love that tied her to Karenin was better than the love between her and Tomas. Better, not bigger. What do you think he means by that? Why is the love between her, it's not bigger than her and Tomas. That's a bigger love. But the love between her and her dog is better. Dog lovers don't understand this. Like people that aren't into pets, get it. There's like character in The Country Woman. It's like, it's just a dog. She sees how sad Teresa is when the dog's about to die. It's just a dog. Some people have that attitude. It's just a dog, it's an animal, okay? But why would they say that? Why is her love better? What's better about love between a dog and a human? It's less complicated, right? I think that's true, right? This is why I love dogs so much. I'm not that much of a cat. Even though I have a cat, I'm not really a cat person. But she's a rescue. I sort of like, she basically moved in, and I was like, all right, I guess you're loud enough. I started feeding you. They say once you fed them, they're yours. You own them. So anyway, but I've always had a soft spot for dogs because they just love you unquestioningly. Just what's the word? Unrequited, unquestioning love. Kind of sad too, because even cruel, shitty owners, I see that. Oh, it makes me angry. Because the dog is just still wants to please the owner, even if it's a bad owner. So yeah, I think you're right. So it was better, not bigger. Teresa did not wish to fault either Tomas or herself. She did not wish to claim that they could love each other more. Her feeling was rather that given the nature of the human couple, the love of man and woman is a priori inferior to that which can exist, at least in the best instances, in the love between man and dog. That oddity of human history, probably unplanned by the Creator. It's a completely selfless love. Teresa did not want anything of Karenin. She did not even ask him to love her back. Nor had she ever asked herself the questions that plague human couples. Does he love me? Does he love anyone more than me? Does he love me more than I love him? Perhaps all the questions we ask of love to measure, test, probe, and save it have the additional effect of cutting it short. Perhaps the reason we are unable to love is that we yearn to be loved. That is, we demand something, love, from our partner, instead of delivering ourselves up to him demand-free and asking for nothing but his company. And something else. Teresa accepted Karenin for what he was. She did not try to make him over in her image. She agreed from the outset with his dog's life. She did not wish to deprive him of it. She did not envy him his secret intrigues. The reason she trained him was not to transform him, as a husband tries to reform his wife and a wife her husband, but to provide him with the elementary language that enabled them to communicate and live together. So yeah, not only do they, what was the word that you used? It's, what's that? I still didn't hear you. Uncomplicated, is that what you said? Not complicated? Yeah, sort of just no questions asked, they just unconditionally, so that's the first part. The second part, you're not trying to change them. The way Teresa was like, why do you have to have all these other women? Why can't you be this way instead of that way? You know, it'd be better if you were just like this. No, you accept the dog the way it is. Right? Also, then too, no one forced her to love Karenin. Love for dogs is voluntary. Teresa was again reminded of her mother and regretted everything that had happened between them. If her mother had been one of the anonymous women in the village, she might have found her easygoing coarseness agreeable. Oh, if only her mother had been a stranger. From childhood on, Teresa had been ashamed of the way her mother occupied the features of her face and confiscated her eye. What made it even worse was that the age-old imperative, love your father and mother, forced her to agree with that occupation, to call the aggression love. It was not her mother's fault that Teresa broke with her. Teresa broke with her not because she was the mother, but because she was, not because she was the mother she was, but because she was just a mother. Okay, so yeah, our love of dogs is not forced, right? It's voluntary. I go to the pound and I pick one out, right? It's not like, well, I'm stuck, I gotta love my sister, even though she's annoying or, whatever. Actually, I don't think that of my sister. I used to, though. We did hate each other. Like, we hated each other growing up. It wasn't until, I guess, after high school that now we're kind of close and get along. But I think they say that about twins, that they're really kind of competitive, I guess. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but whatever. The last thing, what else? Most of all, what makes the love between man and dog the better? No one can give anyone else the gift of the idyll, right? Only an animal can do so. Right? We're out of paradise. We've been thrown out of paradise. Every day's different. Oh crap! I gotta do this thing next week. And I got this other thing, this other appointment, and then my career. Oh, and then I gotta find this and that. And then I gotta publish that thing. And people are pissed off about it, so I gotta have a retraction. All this stuff, right? With a dog, it's like, oh god, I gotta go home and feed the cat. Oh, I gotta go home and feed the cat. Every day's the same, right? Clean the litter box, feed the cat, give her some petting, give her some love and attention, take the dog out for a walk. It's cyclical, right? No one can give anyone else the gift of the idyll. Only an animal can do so, because only animals were not expelled from paradise. The love between dog and man is idyllic. It knows no conflicts, no hair-raising scenes. It knows no development. Karenin surrounded Teresa and Tomas with a life based on repetition, and he expected the same from them. Right? Like he gets mad when things change. He's like, damn it, where's my role? Where's my walk? Where's my daily stroll? I want boredom. I want repetition. We haven't gone out in forever. Or we keep doing the same thing. Why don't you take me somewhere new? Right? None of that stuff. He likes the same stuff, right? Over and over again. Well, she starts feeling guilty. She starts having all these thoughts about how, I guess because of the dog and the death of the dog, which we're kind of skipping over. I've already shed enough tears about Nietzsche and the freaking horse. But she starts feeling regret. She's like, man, I'm a dick, Like I've made Tomas do all this stuff for me, and he's done it all, and I haven't sacrificed much for him, and so she starts to feel guilty about this. But the last scene in the book where they're dancing, he sort of reassures her, and this is where I think Camus would come in and say, Tomas is the man, he's the bomb, he's the absurd man, he's awesome, he knows how to live life. But let's read the passage where she starts having these doubts first, and then we'll get to that final scene. This is on page 309. She'd stepped behind a tree trunk. So she's looking at Tomas. He's working on his car because his car's having problems. And the guy, I think it's the town, is it the mayor? The chairman of the collective. He's talking to Tomas and he's kind of saying, hey, Tomas, like, you're a surgeon, you should be a surgeon. He's trying to get him to get his license back. And Teresa, she's looking at them and hearing this conversation and thinking about, oh my God, if it wasn't for me, he probably still would be a surgeon. We'd still be in Switzerland. Why'd I have to leave? And all the stuff I put him through. So she started to feel guilt. This is at the bottom of 309. She stepped behind a tree trunk so that none of the men by the pickup could see her. Standing there observing him, she suffered a bout of self-recrimination. It was her fault that he had come to Prague from Zurich, her fault that he had left Prague. And even here, she could not leave him in peace, torturing him with her secret suspicions while Karenin lay dying. She had always secretly reproached him for not loving her enough. Her own love she considered above reproach, while his seemed mere condescension. Now she saw that she had been unfair. If she had really loved Tomas with a great love, she would have stuck it out with him abroad. Tomas had been happy there. A new life was opening for him, and she had left him. True, at the time, she had convinced herself that she was being magnanimous, giving him his freedom. But hadn't her magnanimity been merely an excuse? She knew all along that he would come home to her. She had summoned him farther and farther down after her, like the nymphs who lured unsuspecting villagers to the marshes and left them there to drown. She had taken advantage of a night of stomach cramps to inveigle him into moving to the country. How cunning she could be. She had summoned him to follow her as if wishing to test him again and again, to test his love for her. She had summoned him very persistently, and here he was, tired and gray, with stiffening fingers that would never again be capable of holding a scalpel. Now they were in a place that led nowhere. Where could they go from here? They would never be allowed abroad. They would never find a way back to Prague. No one would ever give them work again. They didn't even have a reason to move to another village. Good God, had they had to cover all that distance just to make her believe that he loved her? And so she's starting to feel real guilty about this. And he makes an interesting point in the next paragraph. This, I think, ties into the point I was making earlier about how our goodness is tested to how we treat those that are weak and those that are vulnerable. And this kind of proves, I think, Tomas is a saint in that regard, right? Not a saint, but in that regard. We all have a tendency to consider strength the culprit and weakness the innocent victim. But now Teresa realized that in her case, the opposite was true. Even her dreams, as if aware of the single weakness in a man otherwise strong. Because remember, her dreams move him. When she wakes up all like, he's like, oh crap, I gotta comfort her, gotta get her back to sleep and soothe her, my little bulrush basket baby or whatever, right? Even her dreams, as if aware of the single weakness in a man otherwise strong, made a display of her suffering to him, thereby forcing him to retreat. Her weakness was aggressive and kept forcing him to capitulate until eventually he lost his strength and was transformed into a rabbit in her arms. She could not get that dream out of her mind. Yeah, this dream of him as a rabbit, which is kind of, I think, appropriate, a metaphor for him, right? Rabbits are known for having a lot of sex, but they're also very weak. They are very weak and very vulnerable animals. The only thing they're kind of fast, but their predators can catch them. Their only advantage is they can breed like rabbits, right? That's what keeps them surviving. So she turns Tomas into a rabbit. He's still a hornball and gets all these women, but he's weak and, fragile and vulnerable. She doesn't like this, though. Again, she feels bad about it, but this last scene, I think he in a way kind of sums up, I wouldn't say this is the theme of the book, maybe, but I'm kind of looking at it in a way through the lens of Camus. And I certainly think that Camus would like this to be the theme of the book. But this is the last scene. They're at a hotel in the town. They're with the commissioner, and I forgot who else is with them. Is it their son, Simon, Tomas's son? They visit the hotel, and there's an old-timey band playing, and they're on the dance floor dancing, and Tomas is dancing with her, and she tells him how bad she feels and how she ruined his life, and she sort of bares her chest, or gets this off her chest, and he tells her, no, don't say that. It's good. I'm glad you did what you did, right? You added just the right amount of heaviness. He doesn't say that, but that's kind of what he says to his light life. So when Teresa came back from the dance floor with the young man, the chairman asked her to dance, and finally Tomas had a turn with her too. Tomas, she said to him on the floor, everything bad that's happened in your life is my fault. It's my fault you ended up here, as low as you could possibly go. Low? What are you talking about? Well, if we'd stayed in Zurich, you'd still be a surgeon. Right? You'd be a photographer. That's a silly comparison to make, said Teresa. Your work meant everything to you. I don't care what I do. I can do anything. I haven't lost a thing. You've lost everything. Haven't you noticed I've been happy here, Teresa? Tomas said. Surgery was your mission, she said. Missions are stupid, Teresa. I have no mission. No one has. And it's a terrific relief to realize you're free. Free of all missions. Right? That's Camus right there, right? It's not that you're not going to live life and care about things, but I have to have this underlying important thing that's universal. No. Just, find love with Teresa. Find love with your little dog and the little pig that runs around in the country village. There was no doubting that forthright voice of his. She recalled the scene she had witnessed earlier in the day when he'd been repairing the pickup and looked so old. She had reached her goal. She had always wanted to be old. Again, she thought of the rabbit she pressed to her face in her childhood room. What does it mean to turn into a rabbit? It means losing all strength. It means that it means that one is no stronger than the other anymore. And they danced to the strains of the piano and violin. Teresa leaned her head on Tomas's shoulder, just as she had when they flew together in the airplane through the storm clouds. She was experiencing the same odd happiness and odd sadness as then. The sadness meant we are at the last station. The happiness meant we are together. The sadness was the form, the happiness content. Happiness filled the space of sadness. Right? Again, it's sort of tragic beauty. I don't know if that's correct, beauty by accident, but sort of tragic beauty. Happiness and sadness intermingled. Tomas, this is the last paragraph of the book. Tomas turned the key and switched on the ceiling light. So they're walking up to the room to go spend the night in the hotel. Tomas turned the key and switched on the ceiling light. Teresa saw two beds pushed together, one of them flanked by a bedside table and lamp. Up on the lampshade, startled by the overhead light, flew a large nocturnal butterfly that began circling the room. The strains of the piano and violin rose up weakly from below. That last image, I'm not quite sure what to make of. I think, definitely going from dark to light, obviously. They walk into a dark room, dark to light. What emerges from the lampshade is a nocturnal butterfly. A moth, right? Fancy way of saying moth. Nocturnal butterfly. Moths are pretty ugly, butterflies are pretty, I guess. I guess a moth is prettier than what it starts out as. You know, larvae or whatever. Like, that's kind of gross looking. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's sort of, to me, it's kind of like ugliness and beautiful at the same time, maybe. You know, accidental beauty. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But that last image, and also I'm troubled by the music too. What is that supposed to represent? The music weakly, they could hear it from the floor, right, rising up. I can't help but think of kitsch for some reason. I don't know. There's like music is sentimental. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. There's something sentimental about music, old-timey. What does it say too? What are the exact words? The strains of the piano and violin rose up weakly from below. Weakly, I guess that's a contrast to strong, right? Love is the, remember also too, didn't Franz tell Sabina that love is renouncing strength? I just remembered that. That disgusted her. She's like, oh, I want a dominant man, you know? But maybe Kundera's agreeing with Franz in this last passage, right? Tomas gave up his strength, and that was love, right? He could have like totally played Teresa. He could have broken her heart and just sort of moved on like he did with all the other women. But her vulnerability, her weakness endeared him to her, and he was able to sort of, you know, I guess, do that, you know, be good with her, I guess, treat her well, but despite all his, you know, infidelities, I suppose. But anyway. So, I don't know if we answered any questions, to be honest with you. That's one of the things I actually kind of like about this book. I don't think it tries to answer the questions that it poses. For a lot of readers, that's annoying, but I like it because it's not didactic. Well, what does didactic mean? You know what that word means, didactic? People say that a work of art or a piece of literature is didactic when it's too preachy, like it's trying to teach you something. You know, it just gets in the way of you enjoying the work of art and just enjoying the beauty of the prose and how well the characters are developed and the plot and all that stuff. You know, it's just, I think that Ayn Rand is a lot like this. If anybody's ever read Ayn Rand, like The Fountainhead, probably not, but yeah, her novels it's like obvious she's got like a philosophical agenda and all her characters kind of represent somebody. But that's what I kind of like about this book, is it doesn't try to answer these questions definitively. To be fair to the other thinkers that we've been focusing on, I guess they don't really give you too specific a message, but this is even less specific, right? I mean, with Kierkegaard, you know, he doesn't tell you what you should care about, but you need to find something, one thing that's you're super passionate about. So I think for Kierkegaard, he would like Thomas to be a surgeon. That's your Esmo sign. That's your inner passion. Follow that drive, right? There's one thing we all have, you're good at it. It's one thing only you can do. No one can do it as good as you, or maybe they can, but like for your community or whatever, for your life, this is the best you can do. So do that, and you're going to get a lot out of it. You're going to get the most. You're going to enjoy your life. It's going to give your life fulfillment. It could be a love. It could be a profession. It could be whatever. But there's one thing that gives your life meaning, and all other things have value based on that, right? So in a way, he's not super preachy. He's not like telling you what that one thing should be, but he's pretty insistent that's got to be one thing. It's sort of like, in a way, it kind of reminds me of Teresa with her, like, I don't want to share you kind of things. Like there's only so much love to go around, and if you love other women, then you have to love me less. And so I think Kierkegaard kind of has that sort of idea that if you divide your life up into all these different sort of passions, then you sort of lose the passion for that one thing, and you're compromising yourself. So just jump right in, take that leap of faith, and live your life to its fullest, finding that one passion, that one thing. I would say the only character in the book that would come closer is Thomas, but he fails at it, right? He doesn't follow his surgery. He goes with Teresa, I think. So I think Kierkegaard wouldn't have liked that. He was like, no, this is obviously what you're passionate about. You love it. It gives your life meaning. You're good at it. People want you to do it. Do it. Vonnegut, though. I think out of all three, I guess Vonnegut would have the most specific answer how we should live our lives. What was his message in Silence of the Titan, basically? What's the meaning of life according to Beatrice and Malachi? What's that? Right, to love whoever's around to be loved. Thomas did a good job. I think both Teresa and Thomas, he would like them. Sabina and Franz screwed up. They messed up, big time. Sabina probably more than Franz. Franz messed up because he was an idealist. He wanted to be like, I'm a hero and I'm saving European society or whatever, right? Stupid idealism. Franz should have stayed with the girl that he loved, the schoolgirl or whatever, right? That was probably what Vonnegut would say. Sabina, he'd say, you had so many chances and you betrayed all of them, right? You could have been a better daughter. You could have been nicer to Franz, that sort of thing. But Camus, I think, again, he's probably the least, there's the least content. He's just sort of just get as much out of life as you possibly can. You only live once. Get as much out of life as possible. Nothing really matters in the end. It's all absurd, says Camus. But that doesn't mean you should just give up. Keep pushing that boulder up the hill, knowing it's going to fall, and pushing it back up again. The only character I think that wins for him is Thomas, especially that last scene we just read, right? Thomas is like, missions are stupid. They're just for fun. I like what we're doing now. This is cool. I didn't miss anything from being a surgeon. No, this is great. I'm cool. Remember he also got joy out of being a window washer. He's like, yeah, maybe there's no me, but hey, I can find, now I don't care about my job. I'm not as stressed out about it. I lost sleep at night when I was a surgeon because I messed up on the operating room. Now I'm sort of like, hey, whatever. Go back to work, wash some windows, life's good. It's okay. I can find happiness. I can whistle. As Camus says, I imagine Sisyphus happy. Hard for me to imagine that, but Camus does. And I think maybe Thomas does it, right? Thomas does. So I think Camus would praise Thomas. I'm not sure he would have liked it. He really would have been badgering Franz. Franz really screwed up, right? Camus would have hated Franz. What an idiot. What happened to Franz? We didn't talk about this class. He dies. How does he die? His friend invites him to some protest in Cambodia. Well, he's in Thailand, I guess, and they march to the Cambodian border. And what happens to him? Nothing gets done, right? They go to the bridge and they're there to get doctors to help people, and they're met with silence. He goes there all for nothing. He goes there because he wants to impress Sabina, right? This perfect, she'll be watching, my unearthly love, my heavenly love. I have to leave my earthly love, this girl sitting across from me, who actually cares about me, who actually I mean the world to her. I'm going to leave her to make Sabina proud. You think Sabina would have been proud if she saw Franz doing what he was doing? No. How do you think she would have reacted? What an idiot. I'm turned off, right? I'm strong, but I would never use my strength against you because I love you. You're my little. Oh, that makes her nauseated. it, right? So he's dying for this, and he ends up dying, not in Cambodia. How does he die? He basically gets mugged, but he gets tricked into it because he thinks he's saving somebody, right? Like he doesn't know the language, someone's pulling his arm, he's like, what's going on? Do you need help? Someone needs help? I'll go help him. And then he runs out into the street and these dudes jump him. And he's like, I'm strong. He punches one and the guy knocks one of them out, but this dude behind him hits him over the head with a club. He's unconscious, wakes up in a hospital bed, and he's paralyzed. And he can't even speak. He looks at his wife and he wants to tell her, get out of my face, I never want to see you again. Where's my girlfriend? Where's my love? But he finds his voice is gone. He can't even say anything. So she takes over and now retells the story of his life and ruins his life. He's screwed. All to impress this imaginary Sabina. Yeah, Camus would have been like, what a fool. Right? What a waste. I'm surprised that, I'm really surprised. I think he does come down on him, but I think he's a little bit nicer than I would be as a novelist. But I think Kundera, I'm surprised he doesn't like tear into Franz as much as he does. I think in a way, because if he did, he would have to sort of give up his thesis. Remember, his thesis is that we don't know if we're right or wrong, right? When we make a decision, should Franz have gone to Cambodia or not? Should Tomas have gone back to Prague for Teresa or not? Would his life have been better if he stayed or not? We never know because we can't go back and try the other option. We can't repeat. But I think the story of Franz is pretty who thinks he should have, it's pretty obvious that he made the wrong choice, right? I mean, is there any world where going to Cambodia to get nothing done and just die is there any world where that's the right choice? I don't think so. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty unequivocal bad mistake. I think with all the other characters, you could argue, who knows? Who knows, their life might have been better. Sabina's life might have been better if she gave Franz a chance and let their words come together and learn each other's language, and those words would no longer be misunderstood. But we don't know, right? So, but I think with Franz, for sure, he made the wrong choice in the end. But I don't know, maybe somebody's got an idea for a paper that will, convince me I'm wrong about that. But I think that's a pretty unambiguous mistake. I can't think of any of these people that would think that was a good thing. Maybe Kierkegaard would say it was okay if he cared about Cambodia. Like if Cambodia was his one thing, I care so much about the people of Cambodia. I visited there before the Khmer Rouge took over, and they were such lovely people, and I think I could actually do something to help them. I'm gonna do it, and I'm passionate. But that's really not what's going on with Franz, right? He's doing it to impress this imaginary witness, Sabina, right? This idealized version of Sabina that he has in his head. So, anyway, I was just doing this to sort of wrap things up, and I think just to kind of help you guys with your final paper, at least the first option of the final paper. But has anybody even started thinking about what they're going to write about? Do you have any questions or concerns about the final essay? You're going to do Camus? That's probably what I would do, honestly. I would either do Camus or I could see how I could write them all, honestly. But I think Camus would be the funnest for me because I would just tear up Franz and I would praise Tomas. That's what I'd pick. Tomas and Franz is sort of like the good version, the bad version. The one that Camus would hate, the one that Camus would say, hey, yeah, he did right. I don't think Camus would like everything that he did, but in the end, by the end of the novel, I think he's sort of come to the kind of realization Camus would have liked him to. Anybody else have any ideas of what you're going to write about yet? Any thoughts? What characters are you going to write? So Camus and... You're not sure the other one? Yeah. So Franz for sure, but...
It's I want to see how many examples I have.
Yeah, go through the book and see who's got more things you can... That's a good idea, yeah. Because I think, again, I've given you some suggestions, but you're right. I think maybe... Certainly you can make the case that, a lot of these characters pass up the chance of love. But I think the only one that'd be easy to find examples of that would maybe Sabina. And even then I can only think of maybe 3 or 4. She betrayed her family, or I guess her ex-husband, but he was a dick anyway. She should have left that guy. He was a drunk, remember? But her dad, the way she sort of scorned her dad when he was a bit of a gruff dad, but did it out of love. I think she realizes and feels bad about that, abandoning him. She passed up Franz. What else did she pass up? I guess she didn't have many examples I thought she did. Well, she definitely didn't. She never really wanted to follow the communists. She was anti-communism and never liked the May Day parade, so that wasn't much of a betrayal on her part. In the end, I guess she there's a short passage where she's like taking care of this family, right? This old couple or whatever, right? But she doesn't really betray them. They just get old, I guess, right? At that point, she's like, crap, I betrayed too many people. I need to start like caring. I need a little kitsch in my life. Jonas is the only person that's thought about their final paper? Nobody else has any idea what you're going to write about? Well, you better start thinking about it because it's going to be due here before you know it. You know, you think, oh yeah, the 15th, I got like 9 days, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like the 14th and you're like, holy crap. Yeah.
I was trying to look up, is the prompt on Blackboard?
Yeah, it should be on Blackboard. Yeah, in the Kundera folder. Yeah, so if you go to course content, Kundera, they're at the very bottom. And you turn it in there too, but there's, yeah. And I need to edit it because the second option says that you can use lightness and weight, going from light to dark, but I'm gonna add soul and body as well. You can pick either of those three.
I think that's so involved.
That'd be to me, that'd be easy to write. You could talk a lot about Teresa and Tomas. To me, I would pick those two probably. Although all characters would work, really, you know. I don't know what I would do with Franz, though. I think Franz, like, they don't talk much about using the terminology of soul and body, but he does seem to be, the only thing physical about him is his strength, right? Like, he's a strong guy, he like likes to flex. He's like, I'm kind of strong. He's kind of impressed by his own might. But he also seems he's such a heavy guy, like that, to me, that's almost like a juxtaposition. You know, it's almost like he's like a walking contradiction, right? Like he's got this physical prowess, he's like ripped or whatever, but he's such a gentle lamb on the inside. He's such a like goody mama's boy, like, oh, I'm gonna be a hero here, look, I'm gonna save the day, that kind of thing. So I think if I had to decide, is he more of a bodily type? No, I think he's more of a soul type. Him and Teresa are the soul types, and Sabina and Tomas more associated with the physical, with the body. Yeah, any other questions, concerns? Y'all want to get out of here, don't you? You're like, this is my only class today. I want to go eat lunch. Just get this over with, right? Is anybody else have any other classes today besides this one? Just you? You're the only one? Well, everybody else came out here just for me? No, I feel so privileged. Thank you for joining me. Well, it's been fun. First time I've taught this class. I enjoyed it quite a bit. If you haven't already, try to, if you could, to give some feedback for I think the course evaluations are on Blackboard. And if you have any suggestions, I don't get a chance to read them till next semester, but especially since this is the first time I've taught the class, I think I mentioned last week that I'm thinking about not covering this book next time and doing like 3 or 4 other readings instead, as much as I'd like to. But man, after getting through that last chapter, I don't know if I want to do that again. That passage on Nietzsche, I don't know. But anyway, I do like the book a lot though, and I think there's a lot to it. We got a lot out of it, so I'm really on the fence about it. Plus, it's a lot of work to change the class. If I got rid of the book and taught 3 or 4 shorter readings, then I'd have to come up with 3 or 4 other like lectures, and that's just, yeah. So anyway, that's just, again, if you would do me a favor and talk, give me any suggestions you might have, that'd be really appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the Kundera essay, you say, well, it's basically a final, right?
Yeah, this is the final paper, final essay.
So
Yeah.
you're saying you use evidence from the text.
Right.
Do you want us, because I know some professors have preferences, do you want us to like prove directly and explain it, or do you want to paraphrase?
Either or. I mean, I would mix it up a bit, is what I would do, is I would mix it up a bit. You don't want to do too much quotations, because then it's like, where's your voice, right? Like I've had papers where it's like, a third of it is just quotes from the text. But I think using quotes from the text is definitely, it's not required, but I would definitely expect it. I'd expect at least a few. But yeah, don't overdo it. If I look at the return in report and it's like 44% quotations or something, I'm like, wait a minute here. I think it's a matter of style. Like you said, some professors prefer one or the other. I prefer good writing. And I think that if you do too much of one or too much of the other, it's bad writing. You have to kind of balance it out. And it depends on what you're writing about. It depends on. You were about to say something though, or no?
Yeah, I think I like the book.
What, you like this book? I like it a lot. I really want to teach it next semester, plus it's less work for me. But I would probably have to drop the Russell reading, which I wasn't that excited about anyway. Like, I don't think it added a whole lot to the class. It was sort of an objection to Kierkegaard, so it was kind of a contrast to Kierkegaard. But I could cover it without reading it. You know, I could just mention Russell while I'm doing Kierkegaard, and we could still talk about him without having to spend the whole day on Russell, and then we won't be in such a hurry at the end of the semester. Because we did miss that day for weather. So I think if we hadn't missed that day for weather, it would have been just perfect timing. You know, we would have ended just right. But anyway, I'm going to stop recording unless anybody has any questions about the paper, because I'm sure other people would be interested in. Want to ask any other questions about the final paper? All right. Well, again, thanks a lot for taking the class. Hopefully I'll see you around campus next semester.